Okay. A little more anti-seize compound there. And we'll go ahead and do the other side of the collet here too. Just lightly. Okay, here's a little collet piece. And the pyrometer, we want that to be about in the middle of the exhaust flow, so that's going to be about like that. I'll go about a turn past finger tight on that. Well, that's probably fine right there. A little extra anti-seize there. So anyhow, there's our probe. I think that's the part most people get nervous about, drilling a hole in a big expensive engine. So we'll go ahead and grab that wire and get it hooked up and kind of go from there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and grab this and connect it. It's got a locking tab there. Get that locked. Then I've got some split loom here. And we'll go ahead and some of that on here. And we'll just tape that off every here and there. Here on the other side, just kind of below the clutch master cylinder with the yellow cap here, you can see that rubber boot there. And I'll run the convoluted split loom the length of the wire until it goes through that boot and up into the cap. So this is how things look once we've got buttoned up a little bit. There's our probe. The wiring's all in that nice black split loom and zip tied to the alongside the factory main harness there, over to the end of the main harness and down into that to that grommet below the clutch master cylinder. And if we go around to the cab side here, here you can see the inside of that grommet I'm talking about. I just popped it out of the sheet metal there, and I'll poke another hole in it and thread this blue wire through. And then we'll zip tie it up under the dash here towards the A-pillar. Alrighty then, looking at the inside of the cab, now that we've got the pyrometer installed, we're going to be needing to take out the factory A-pillar cover here, since we're going to be replacing that. I'm also going to pop this side panel off and pull this dash down, and then there's a series of screws here that connect to the bezel around the instrument panel. So I can pop that forward. So we're going to need to gain access to the back of the headlight switch to get our signal from the instrument panel dimmer, and then over here we're going to end up taking the center console, get to a couple screws here and get to the bezel around the stereo, and that way we can get to the cigarette lighter socket that gives us key-on power for our gauge. Okay, here's this little trim piece, just to show you how it's attached. It's got, it's like 6 little friction clips in the end of the dash here. You just reach in with a trim stick and knock those out. Then it's hooked here that catches the top of the A-pillar, and if you jiggle it down, it'll pop out. For the A-pillar, there are 2 little plastic screw covers on either side of the grab handle, and we'll just take a small knife blade, something like that, being careful not to scratch them, and pop those out. We'll retain those and put them over on our SRT-10 A-pillar, and then we'll remove these 2 screws. The A-pillar will just pop forward and pull out of the junction with the top of the dash. Okay, here we see the factory A-pillar removed. See, there's a couple of spring clips here, 2 10mm bolts that we pulled out of these holes, and then there's a couple clips here that engage the upper cover of the dashboard. So we've got that out of the way, and that exposes the wiring that runs up the A-pillar for the cab lights and the overhead computer. So I'm just going to set that out of the way. I'll retain the nuts, and there's a little wedge on these that I'll just poke out with a screwdriver and pull these screw covers out. Okay, as far as the next step goes, the top of this kick plate under the dash is just held in by some spring clips. You can just grab it and pull it back. And then you can see behind that, not very well lit, Phillips screw. A couple more Phillips screws, and that holds on this front panel, so we can get better access to that group of wires right back in there. Okay, in this phase I've just removed these 9/32 screw heads and then just pulled forward on this piece here. That got me able to get my hand in there and grab this connector off the back of the dimmer switch. It has a little disconnect button right there, and I pulled it out. So we'll go ahead and we'll be tapping into the wire for the dimmer there. Got the gauge from Geno's, and they actually send a handy little cheat sheet, which basically tells me I'm looking for the orange wire with brown stripe in pin number 4. So that'd be that one. And what I'll be doing next is seeing if I can pick that wire out of the connector. If I can, I'll take a pocket knife, strip some wiring off of it, solder on the right colored wire for the dimmer for the gauge, and then shrink tube it. If I'm not able to pick that wire out of the connector, I'll just do the same thing, except I'll use electrical tape because I won't be able to get shrink tubing over the wire. Okay, what I've done since I had the camera last on, I went ahead and mounted the black wire for ground here to this lug, and took my ohm meter and verified that I do have continuity to ground. The other thing I did, I went ahead and peeled the wire there for the dimmer circuit, and I went ahead and hooked power back up to the truck, put the key in, and hooked a voltmeter to that and verified that I had the right wire. It's just kind of a bummer to make a mistake on that and take just a second to verify the directions are right. So I've got my orange wire that powers the lighting circuit to the new gauge, and I'm just going to go ahead and twist it around the little section of wire I stripped with a pocket knife. Just cut a ring around both ends and shave it down to bare wire and pick it off, and twist it together like that. It'll make it easy to solder. When you solder, heat the wires until the wires get hot enough to melt the solder, and the solder will kind of wick its way through the rest of the wires, and you'll get a good solid connection that'll never pull apart or corrode or cause any problems.